Kanju, a small village tucked away in the southern belt of Punjab. The women sit in a quiet rhythm, their fingers steadily crafting intricate patterns and weaving stories into thread, clay, and fabric. They're not just creating anything, they're reclaiming something that the world has often denied them: power, dignity, and voice. I'm Amina Kanju, and since the past few years, I have been residing in my village, working towards the welfare of rural women for their economic empowerment in a way to secure their livelihoods and rights. I have had the honor living among these brilliant women, but not as their leader, as a listener. And what I have discovered is this: handcraftsmanship is not just an act of creation, it is a tool of survival, resistance, and empowerment. And it is and has been a silent revolution passed down by the women. Now, before moving to Alipur, like most of us, I was caught in the chaos of life: ambitions, deadlines, travels. I think it was the pandemic that changed a lot in me. I believe it changed a lot in many of us. It slowed the world down, and for me, it brought a lot of clarity. Now, back in Manipur, I saw poverty up close. But I felt, what I felt the most was the weight women were carrying. By the way, women comprise approximately half of the total population of Pakistan, and most of them live in the rural areas. And in rural, woman is the one who's doing everything. She is the one waking up before dawn, going into the fields working, feeding the kids, taking care of the in-laws, managing the household, cooking, cleaning, washing, doing other agricultural activities. She is literally the one doing everything. The husbands are usually away in search of work in other cities. They're mostly not around. It is the woman. And, even besides doing everything, she has no financial autonomy, no say in decision, and in most cases, no basic dignity. Now, there was a specific incident that shattered me. I was very close to this girl. Whenever I would visit Alipur, she would be the first one to greet me. A brilliant mind, a beautiful soul, and a girl full of life. I saw great potential in her, and I was sponsoring her education because I really wanted her to study, and I encouraged her parents to let her do so. But unfortunately, she was married off at the age of 15, and by 17, she had endured unthinkable violence, including loss of a child, just because she was a girl. Now that was it for me. I still get goosebumps talking about it. That was it for me. I realized with all the education, privilege, facilities, if I'm not able to do something for my people, then what am I supposed to do? What is my purpose? Instead of telling myself, why me? I started telling myself that if not me, then who? Now, I didn't return to Alipur with a grand plan. I wanted to empower the women, and I wanted to improve their livelihoods. But honestly, I had no idea how I was supposed to do that. I started working on improving the education system, but I soon realized that education is not the only solution. Of course, it is essentially important, but it is not the only solution in the rural. The more time I spent with the women, there was one thing that kept resurfacing, and it was their hands. Yes, their hands knew stories, generations of them. They could mold clay, they could stitch intricate patterns, and they could do beautiful embroideries without any formal training. Their craft was intricate, inherited, and deeply cultural. But unfortunately, it was hidden, unpaid, and not valued enough. Now that's where the injustice lies. Women's labor, especially rural women's labor, is either exploited or erased. And I also realized that, this craft, this was not a job for the women. This wasn't their work. It was their identity. And the only space where they felt in control. Now, the next thing that I discovered, it amazed me, and it was that hand craftsmanship has been more than aesthetic. Historically, it was the only way women could contribute to economy while being confined to their domestic roles. Yes, it became a tool of pleasure, but also education. It was a secret classroom, a sign of protest, and a safe space for sisterhood. Another thing that I came across was that in South Asian region, embroidery was not just decoration, it was communication. Mothers stitched prayers, symbols of resistance, and decoded messages into fabric. And in many cultures, weaving was used to restore oral history. And during the war times, this craft became a therapy, and in peace, it was a tradition. I believe, in every era, it was just a mere way for the woman to say, I exist, I create, I matter. Now, we didn't need to reinvent anything. We simply had to believe in something that was already there. So we created a space where women could gather and practice new skills such as embroidery, stitching, shoemaking, jewelry designing, along with the basic education. We also introduced them with the modern technology because I believe it was very essential for them to run their businesses online. To my surprise, these women, they learned in no time. And I believe it was not because they were taught from scratch, but because these skills, they lived inside them. Eventually, their confidence grew, their income grew, and most importantly, their voices grew. And when the world started seeing their craft, many retail brands and artists and international collaborators started reaching out to them, which was incredible because these women, they stopped seeing themselves as victims and started seeing themselves as entrepreneurs, professionals, and artists. Now, this whole transformation was not just economic. It was mental, spiritual, and cultural. Their daughters were enrolled in school, their husbands started to listen, and the whole dynamic of the village shifted. And how? With just a mere, simple act of making. Now, you all must be wondering, why does it all matter beyond Alipur? Well, because across the world, women's labor, especially handcraft, is being devalued or erased. We are forgetting that in every stitch there is a history, and in every motif there is a story. We are trading handmade with mass production, basically. If we want equity and if we want dignity for the rural woman, we must invest in ecosystems where we already have power, not just in schools and jobs in the cities, but looms in the villages, storytelling through threads, and play in hands. We need to stop seeing these rural women as victims and start seeing them as knowledge holders, professionals, and artists. We must invest in craft. We must support it. We must preserve it and pass it on. Because when a woman holds a needle, she is not just sewing. She is remembering herself. She is writing her story. And sometimes she's starting a revolution, one step at a time. Thank you.